Okay, so welcome everyone. We're going to talk about some very deep things, and in the process, I may deal with a situation in current events, situation that's very relevant to everyone on this call. You may have heard about it in the news. You may have seen it in different ways. You may have even watched Dave Chappelle's monologue, which if you did, you may be aware of what's going on here. There's a certain level of, what the ADL, whatever we call anti-Semitism. And I want you to understand, we're going to deal with this. I'll just explain it here, but I listened to Dave Chappelle's monologue. I didn't read what Kanye West said, and I didn't really read what Kyrie Irving said. I know Kyrie Irving's got a Jewish name, but I don't think he's Jewish. But the thing, and Dave Chappelle also. But anyway, I listened to Dave Chappelle's thing, and what basically he is repeating, how we want to box it, is an old story. It's called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And this was a book, whatever level. I mean, I can't say I read the book. I know I shouldn't laugh. I know the terrible sufferings that Jews went through for hundreds and hundreds of years because of the ideas of this book. But the ideas of the book, in a sense, is kind of what was said, what Dave Chappelle said, talking about, say, Hollywood. The Jews own Hollywood. I don't know if you saw it, but it was amazing. The last line of the thing, he kind of says, like, he doesn't want to get canceled, and he gets very serious. And then he says, whoever those people are. Who are those people he's referring to? The Jews. That's what the Protocols of Elders of Zion says. The Jews have a plot to control the world. And the question is, what is this idea? Where does this come from? Are we just going to say that whatever these people think they're observing, they're crazy, they're evil? I don't know. Confused, I know, but I don't know. How do I want to define them and understand what is motivating them? But they're seeing something. That's what he's saying. Dave Chappelle said, I'm seeing something. I don't know how to explain it. I'm seeing the Jews control Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. The fact that Jews control Hollywood is an embarrassment to me. It's an embarrassment. We don't believe in Hollywood. That's the wrong line of the Jews. So let me explain this to you today. This is fascinating. I want to go back to the vision that Daniel interprets to the king Nebuchadnezzar. Right? People don't know their history. They may know Nebuchadnezzar from The Matrix. The people don't know anything today anymore. I know you guys do. But Nebuchadnezzar was the king who conquered the world, the Babylonian king. He destroyed the first temple. And he takes the Jews from the land of Israel, and he puts them as his leading advisors. And he has a dream. And in the dream, he can't remember the dream. It's a perplexing dream, but he can't remember it. And he makes a decree he's going to kill all the wise people if they cannot tell him the dream and its interpretation, which is kind of weird because how are they going to remember it? Daniel prays to God, and he gets the dream and the interpretation, and he goes back to the king of Babylon and tells him, this is your dream, and this is what it means. And in the dream, he sees a statue, and the statue has a head of gold, a body of silver, and then like thighs of brass, or bronze, we would call it brass, the original one. And then the legs are iron. And then the feet are iron mixed with clay. That's what he sees. And then a rock comes, smashes the feet, and the whole thing crumbles. The whole statue crumbles. The rock gets bigger and bigger and fills everything. Now, Daniel tells him this dream is the different kingdoms that will take over in the world when the temple is destroyed. The first kingdom is you, Babylon. You are the gold head. The second one is the silver. That will be the next kingdom called Persia, Media. The thighs then will be the Greek kingdom that will come. Okay? Now, there's a process here. I mean, gold is certainly glorious. Babylon was a certain power. Silver is less. Bronze or brass or copper, we're going to call it, is called brazen. In the text, somebody who is called a brazen person has a meitzach mechoshes. He has a forehead of brass that stands as strong. That was the Greeks. The lower part was iron, and that was Rome. Rome was the power. They were iron. They were crushing. They were a war machine. And the feet is a combination of iron and clay. And different explanations for that. What does that mean, iron and clay? Who's iron and clay? Some explanations are the iron and clay are what's going to happen in the end of time, where the feet are combined with, say, we'll call it, we don't know who they are exactly, a lot of discussion in the commentaries, but the iron was Rome, which was the Western world, and the clay, the combination of the Arab world, the Muslim world. And there's some coming together they have when they fight against Jerusalem. And that's in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 38, their famous chapter talks about when they come, excuse me, when the nations come to fight Jerusalem, they want to combine together. Okay, so there's some kind of alliance between the Western world and the cheres, the clay, which is the Muslim or Arab world. There's some kind of combination. Okay, it makes some kind of unified front, and they come to attack Jerusalem. But that's the discussions in the book of Yechezkel. At a certain point, they turn to each other and they realize we don't get along. That's one infidel. You're also an infidel. I don't agree with you. And they fall apart in the same way that clay does not combine with steel. And then it breaks. And the whole statue breaks. And then the rock that grows into a giant mountain is now the idea of the coming of Mashiach and the return of the kingdom of Hashem through the Jewish people who would bring it out in the vision that Daniel interprets, explains. Now, I'm going to start with, I'm not starting with the head, which is Babylon. I'm not going to go to the middle part, the silver, which is Persia. I'm going to go today to talk about the thighs area, which is Greece. Now, why do I want to talk about the thighs in particular? Because this month in the calendar is the month about the Greeks. This is the month of the story of Hanukkah, when the Jews battle the Greeks. And they have this incredible victory, miraculous victory of a few rabbis and their ragtag bunch of religious Kohanim, the priests that served in the temple, and they fight the largest superpower in the world, and they beat them. And the story there, everyone knows the basic story. And then afterwards, they re-inaugurated the Beis Hamikdash temple, and the Greeks who were idolaters and were fighting a hard battle. They had made all the oils impure, and they found one jar of oil that had the seal of the high priest, which we knew was still pure and holy, and they were able to use it. It was enough for one day, and the miraculous lasted for 8 days. That is why Jews light the candles for 8 days in remembrance of that miracle of Hanukkah. Now, I got to explain to us, guys, the Greeks. What was the story with the Greeks? The Greeks were very different than the Babylonians or the Persians. The Persians basically, everyone had their own thing they did. You had, yes, the king of Babylon wanted them to bow down to the statue, and the reason why he bowed down to it, he built a goat statue because he wanted to retain his strength. But everyone had different religions, everyone had different beliefs. And the Babylonians knew that. The Persians gave the Jews the ability. They ran their own community according to their beliefs. They weren't. That wasn't their thing. The Greeks, though, had a new idea, spreading the Greek philosophy throughout the world. That's what it was. And everybody said, "Yeah, this is great. These are thinking people. You got Socrates, you got Plato, you got Aristotle. This is unbelievable. We have these crazy backwards ideas, and now comes along these people, the first people who take the human mind, and they're not getting lost in magic and hocus pocus. They're thinking. And the Greek philosophy spreads throughout the world. The Jews said, that's not for us. We believe in the human mind and the crucial aspect of using the human mind. But it's not like you think, where it's a question of you know better, the human being is God, humanism. That was the Greek idea. I just want to explain to you, understand, Aristotle was a very, very smart person. I mentioned in a class recently, I don't know if it was this class, but Aristotle was very, very smart. My mommy says he hit the level a person could using his own mind, who didn't have the revelation of Torah, didn't have prophecy. He was brilliant. What was the problem? And this, by the way, doesn't even work with today's science. Aristotle did not go and do scientific experiments. What did he do? He sat back in his armchair and he thought. He thought. He was a good thinker. So he thought, and he said, you know what? If this makes sense in the human mind, it's true. And if it doesn't, it's not true. That's a very interesting way to look at the world. It happens to be not correct. Right, we know that's not correct. Anyone who knows any science knows that Newtonian physics, okay, that made sense, but that's not. But when you go into other things like Einsteinian relativity, quantum, you go into other areas that do not work on a macro level, that they don't necessarily make sense. It's maybe beyond what you think, because Aristotle, there's an entire everything beyond what your mind can conceive, but they put their minds first. So now here's what happens. So now you have the Jews coming along and fighting against the Greeks. And they're saying, we don't want this use of the human mind. We don't accept your belief. And this was the whole problem. There were Jews, by the way, you should know this, because it's going to tie in with how I started this session. There were Jews who supported the Greek ideas. They were called Hellenists amongst the Jewish people themselves. These guys were leading the charge. They were saying, yeah, this is great. This is brilliant. And the rabbis said, no, it's not. And many of the people said, no, it's not. And there was a battle amongst the Jews themselves. Now, it wasn't a war, but there was a battle for the culture. Like who's going to win? Is it the Torah way, what God has given us from going back to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moshe on Mount Sinai, going down all the generations, keeping that? Or is it some idea that someone else is bringing in? I want you to see this pattern, because this is what happens in the Jewish world today. Just because two people are Jewish doesn't mean they're saying the same thing. One could be saying what is the word of Hashem and the Torah, and one could be saying new ideas that are their ideas. So now the Jews come along and say, no, we don't accept this. We're gonna fight against the Greeks. Now, it's very brazen to go and believe you, 5 rabbis with their extended group, could go and fight against the superpower of the world. It's brazen. And the truth is, it was. Because there's different ways to be a brazen person. You can be a brazen person because you just have to do your way. And that's what the Greeks were. You know why they were, like I said in the example before, they were the bronze, the brass, the strong metal. Why? Because they used their minds and they were able to argue with anyone and stand up and say, we're right, you're wrong. Because we are the new thinking people. We're the Greeks. And that's how they went and they conquered the world. Their wisdom was superior and they saw themselves as superior. And that led to their brazenness. The Jewish people in Hanukkah took brazenness in the side of holiness. They took that and said, we need to be brazen now to stand up for truth. And they went and they fought a ragtag bunch against the superpower. And I want to tell you something that the mystics say. It's unbelievable. They say that once the Jews won the story of Hanukkah, the great Greek philosophers stopped. How many great Greek philosophers have you heard of in the past couple hundred years? No, not too many. They were great Greek philosophers. They were brilliant. Now, there are sources they learned from King Solomon originally. I'm not going to get into that today. But they were brilliant, and they were innovative. And after the War of Hanukkah, they're gone. And the reason for that is because we took the brazenness that they had, the brass, the bronze, the copper, that metal that's so hard, the brazen face, and we took it and used it for the side of holiness. We're going to go and stand up for what's right now, even if it doesn't make any sense. We know this is right. Yes, we're going to trust in Hashem, of course, but he wants us to do what's right and to stand up. That is the story of Hanukkah. Now, what does it have to do with Kanye West, Kyrie Irving, and Dave Chappelle, and the whole thing that's going on in the world today? I got to explain this. This is very fascinating. When I say the Jewish people have this brazenness, it's a certain quality. The Greeks had it because they had certain ways to see the world and think of the world. And the Jews do also. And that is why God gave the Jews the Torah. Because everyone, as we know, we've talked about, has their mission in life. When you look at Noahides, righteous Noahides is a fascinating word the sages use. They call it Chassidei Umas Olam. Chassidi means the pious of the nations, which is an interesting term. Why didn't they say the righteous of the nations, which is how they translate it in English, but it's not the real translation. The word is Chassidei, the pious of the nations. Now, we know there's an aspect of righteousness. I've told that many times. Noah was righteous. It says he was righteous. But there's a difference between the word a righteous tzaddik and the word chassid. Why do the sages call the righteous of the nations, why do they call them the pious of the nations? And one answer is like this, because although there is the 7 commandments that the Noahides must do, but there's an aspect where they don't have the obligation of the entire Torah the Jewish people have. And therefore, when they do good things, very often it's in a place of, I am extending myself. For example, if I do something because I am commanded to, means I have to do it, or am I doing it something because I'm a nice person, I want to do it? And the Talmud is a whole discussion, which is better. I'm not going to get into that today, but I want to spend the difference of it. When I do something that I'm not obligated to do, it's a relationship where I am extending myself beyond what I have to do. And in turn, God extends beyond what he has to do. He gives me kindness. That's the idea of a pious person. A pious person does what's beyond. When a person has to do something, that is the responsibility of the Jewish people. Because although we want to work together in a way where there's unity in the world to serve Hashem, the Jewish people must do the Torah every single second of the day. And if they don't, they will not go and bring the world to where it has to be. And if they do, they will. And this is what the Talmud says. The Jewish nation has a responsibility, has a quality that they have to see the world in unique ways to do everything 24/7. And the nations of the world, the righteous, will do things that they want to do. They'll do things beyond what they are commanded. They're commanded, they'll do even more. And they will support the fact that the Jewish people have to go and are commanded from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep. They're commanded 24/7 to do the mitzvot. There's no time off. And the Talmud says that's a quality they have. They have this I don't know what you want to call it, this, I don't know, it's like brazenness, but they have these strong ideas and these strong things they need to accomplish. And God gave them the Torah and said, you got to do it. And when a Jew doesn't have the Torah, he's got a problem. He's got a problem. Okay? So, yeah, I want to apologize for Jews who don't have the Torah and act in bizarre ways. Again, yeah, that's it. It's the reality. Why is it the reality? Because when a Jew takes the Torah and he makes the world a wonderful, great place because he's doing this job that he has to do, fantastic. But if he doesn't have a Torah, you know what he does? He takes his nechosha, he takes his copper, his strong idea, his thing, and he pushes another thing that's powerful, but it's not right. Karl Marx was a very smart Jew. Freud was a very smart Jew. But they were not something that Jews be proud of. Not proud of it. You know why? Because they're taking a power and they are using it without the guidance of the Torah, how to make the world great. So a lot of times Jews, like the Anti-Defamation League, and people will say, oh, look at all the Jews who did great things in the world. And it's true. The Nobel Prize winners, it's true. And I want to tell you something you should know. The great sages that you never even heard of do 1 billion times more great things for you and the world every minute you never know about. So, okay, we can thank Einstein. We can thank, some of the, medicines and so on. But even the ones who do great things, that's not as great as the things you don't even hear about, of the sages, of what they're doing, how they're fixing the world up. But what happens is, and this is what Kyrie Irving and these people are seeing, and it's the new protocols of the elders of Zion. What they're saying is, wait a minute, Jews have a koach, have a certain power in the world they have to use. And the fact that Jews built Hollywood, not a Jewish creation. It is the antithesis of what the Jew stands for. And yet, there are people who are born into this family who built Hollywood. And that's what they're seeing. They're seeing what's called, and this is very, very deep. If you look in the stories in the Torah, you'll see when the Jews were encamped in the desert and they were traveling through the desert, there was the clouds of glory that covered them. But there were some that were pushed out, that weren't allowed in because they weren't really a small group in that time, but there were some that were out. They weren't. The ones who take Torah, take the ideas that they're given from God, they take their unique way of seeing the world, and they bring out the beauty. And Jews that take their power and their idea, but they don't have the Torah, they make up a lot of very interesting ideas. But these are not things that we want to connect ourselves to. Now is the story of Hanukkah. The world has told you Hanukkah is a holiday of tolerance. It was not a holiday of tolerance. I'm sorry. it was the last thing. Just another new twist on history. It was not the holiday of tolerance. It was the opposite. It was when the Jews that had the Torah went and kicked the Greeks out and took the Jews who were not keeping the Torah and said, you better do it or you're out of here. That's what it was. We're not tolerating things that are wrong. So I'm not defending Dave Chappele or anything like that. But the reality is the Jews can say they want to say, but he's right. There's a lot of Jews in Hollywood and a lot of Jews who have a lot of power in things. And I'm sorry, that you only see the ones that are pushed out of the clouds of glory. But that's what you're seeing, and I would encourage Kanye, encourage Kyrie, and I would encourage Dave Chappelle to go and to meet sages, the real Jews who are representing what the Jewish mission in this world is, to unite the whole world to realize there is a creator of the world. He's a creator of the world. He loves us. He's created us for a beautiful mission, and we want to do it, and we want to unite together to bring out that goodness in the entire world.